Welcome to all.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Richard, for hosting this, and everybody who made this happen, such as Jodine and my grandparents as well. So just to start it off, I know many of you have read the article, but I'll just explain it all. So I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I kind of began taking an interest in art as a kid. Never really painting, but like photography, and also just kind of taking in the city around me. A lot of this was kind of due to my mom and my dad, due to especially my dad, his job. I'd be in all different neighborhoods all over the city a lot. And then growing up, having different friends, different parts of the city, I was just became very interested in urban politics and art. And then about 2010, I had been kind of entertained by photography, was struggling to make any money doing photography, and was kind of wanted to get more directly involved with social issues. And I learned about this form of art called wheat painting, which is where you prepare an image from a sketchbook or from the computer even, and you print it out on paper and then stick it up with glue. And sadly, in Baltimore, for a large host of reasons, 6 of the houses in the city are vacant. The city's population shrunk from over 1 million to just slightly over 500,000. So 6 of the houses are vacant. And then so most of Baltimore had vacant houses in every community. And then some communities, up to 50% of the housing stock was vacant. So it was this issue my dad was heavily involved with. And I was just it's just kind of, when you came to Baltimore, a lot's changed now, but it was in a very kind of negative way, very awing. And while looking at these vacants, there was these boards on the vacants. And then I was into art, and then I heard of people just pretty much painting on the boards of the vacants, and it became a thing in the city. And through putting wheat paste up, through talking to residents, I just kind of got really involved in this little subculture of putting art on vacant houses. And then in Baltimore, there's also a large body of murals all over the city. And that's from the 60s through the 90s, actually kind of into the 2000s, before the mural program kind of collapsed. But there's kind of these old Black Renaissance, Harlem Renaissance style paintings on the walls, and from artists. One that I became really obsessed with was this guy Pantella Mason, and he just painted photorealistically these beautiful types of art. And then another person, Ernest Shaw, so I just became really involved in this world of exciting content and stories, and in telling these stories through painting. That's kind of the overview. I'm going to jump into some videos just of the type of work I do. Break down actual style. Here, I'm 1 second. I'm doing screen share. Okay. 1 second. Bear with me. So this is kind of like the art of mural painting. So this is a video where I muted and so first off, like this mural is in West Baltimore. It's for a local, like, also does a lot of contracting, hire like a lot of Baltimore. So I'll usually work with the client before beginning any piece. And kind of the way I see it all is there's a subject matter and I need to tell whatever they want to say in a visual language. So I usually work in thinking of like a collage that covers that feeling that the business, that the neighborhood, that whoever is trying to show. So it starts priming and painting, usually a base color of the mural with a paint sprayer. So this is a paint sprayer here, and this allows you to cover large areas of the wall way more quickly than spray paint or a brush. Then I start outlining the mural with spray paint. So like these black outlines, that kind of like shows, like informs me where the proportions. How I get that is by either gritting on the wall, which I'll show you a little in another video in a little bit, or like using a projector to actually just project the image up there and outline it. Then I start filling it in with spray paint. I don't use any brushes anymore. Spray paint is just a very effective way to cut surfaces such as brick. Once you get used to it, it's way more effective. A lot of artists find it more effective than paint at mural painting. And it's, the technology behind spray paint and the caps and everything has changed over the years. So I kind of render it, or trying to go for it at least, and kind of bring each of the shapes out of the image. It takes a lot of the bases are, this mural is like pretty much all spray paint, but often I'll like paint the base with little mini what we call hot dog rollers, these little 4-inch rollers. Where you can just fill in large areas quickly and then just kind of finesse it, fine tune everything with spray paint, with different types of what we call skinny caps or fat caps for different effects. And like often that's and like actually you're about to see it, I think. And like, up and coming muralists, people are interested in mural painting. Which I'll kind of like coach through, and very often, like this is actually a good friend of mine. I'll like pay them. It'll be a good opportunity to kind of like give back and create a little bit of a scene around me. So then there's a lot of things like this is like doing a stencil. So I'm like cutting something out, making dots, then like, spraying it up on the wall and then painting it so I can get it perfectly proportional. And just clean lettering. That's the final product. All right, from there, I'm gonna show you guys. Okay, so I would say that the way I think of what I do, that I like pursue independently. And that's usually from, going and talking to people, developing concepts on my own, but then often like being hit up at this point by community associations and, different nonprofits, causes, mainly grant driven in Baltimore. And then the other half of what I do is arts and parks, which is this idea that I formulated with like my best friend in probably around 2015, came to fruition in 2016. So as I said, when I started painting in Baltimore, a sixth of the houses were vacant. And over, about a decade of painting, the city has, I don't know the numbers, but they've demolished like a good amount of, at least I would say probably about half of the vacants around the city. And in this like demolition, it creates always like they'll demolish, a house at the corner and knock down that house, and it will create a wall and a lot. So being in Baltimore, running in both being in the fields of like what we call beautification, landscaping and mural painting, Elise, she we ran into a lot of the same issues. We were being hired by the same people. We were noticing the same problems, like institutionally in Baltimore. The same, like we were finding the same lack of power in changing anything. And we noticed that there's a lot of similarity in both of our games. So we formed our nonprofit with the idea that like often as I was saying, the corner house will come down and there'll be this wall in this lot, and it will be this potential for the community. It could be a site of kind of like that you can holistically just like enjoy or just recharge, like an oasis in a rough day, yet there's like really not too many parks or green space in impoverished neighborhoods in Baltimore. So we were like, okay, maybe we can work with these community associations, apply to grants to take over the spaces. So that idea is what started Arts and Parks. It's branched into a kind of resource that Baltimore neighborhoods have at this point, where they can reach out and be like, okay, we have a problem in our neighborhood, to address that lot, make a change there. And that's been a really interesting venture because I've kind of gone from thinking of the wall in this like 2D flat form, although I try to paint it look a little more 3D, but 2D form, and which is when you think of the whole space in a 360 form, it's a more complete way to think about a project. So let me just show you a video just showing a little bit of the work. Like here's a video showing the work we did in, one second, a neighborhood in East Baltimore. Okay, what's going on? I'm going to fast forward parts of it since I have a few things to show you guys. And so this is actually, we're painting, me and my friend Jay, we're like painting the background with like a paint and primer mix. And we're just doing this kind of like cloud scene, which is pretty fun since it's all painting it from the ground. This is a genie lift, which is like, I rent aerial lifts and I'm certified to be able to paint large scale like this. The piece of paper that I'm referencing, and it helps me proportionally map out the shapes and sizes without having to use a projector or anything like that. So yeah, going through that, kind of more of this. I'm going to get to the landscaping. So usually I come in, since whenever I use it, especially in a genie lift, since it will destroy anything to ground below it, just huge tires. So like I'll come in, finish the forward, and then Elise will come in and then do the landscaping. So she has like a mini excavator, which is like just kind of perfect for doing like lot spaces, small parks like this. And type, you can see how busy that street is. So like you kind of need to, in Baltimore, be able to work with smaller machinery to do actual landscaping. You know, she this what she calls like the construction phase, where she kind of makes the shape of the park, and then it goes to a planning phase from there. And then here's like some final shots. And then, so one of the ways we've been thinking more recently is that, like, there's companies in Baltimore with the funding that, like for instance, Coca-Cola moved into this neighborhood, in East Baltimore. And it was just like a bottling facility. They just moved in the neighborhood and they had no connection to the neighborhood. And the neighborhood was a very impoverished neighborhood that had needs. And so we talked to the neighborhood and talked to Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola wanted to make a positive impact and to be welcome there. So they like were able to hire a bunch of people from the neighborhood and hire us to, and a bunch of other organizations too, to do projects in that neighborhood, where we pretty much came to them with a proposal, which they ended up funding. And they got a video out of it, and the neighborhood got 3 really amazing instances of landscaping and mural painting. Like they got 8 murals around the neighborhood. So yeah, we kind of worked in this way, like Rocky, who's one of the people you'll see in a second, one of the murals. We pretty much came to him and we told him what we do, and we made what we called Rocky's checklist. And it was like a thing, a list of locations and ideas of things we could handle in the neighborhood for him. So we pretty much took that checklist, we made a project out of it, we brought it to Coca-Cola, and we were like, hey, you guys should fund this, you're in this neighborhood, it would be a good look. And they ended up pulling the trigger on it, for just making a commercial, just as it doesn't, the Coke isn't really even incorporated into the murals at all. And it was like a really solid move. Yeah, that's Rocky there in the mural, that's him. Yeah, that was a really amazing project. I really like being able to work in a series, because one of the inherent problems with mural painting is when you go to a community, they're going to sit there and they're going to, like, pretty much every time they're going to want this one mural to be able to tell the story of it all. And like, that is never possible. And when that happens, it often happens that community actual piece of artwork, you know, that like is supposed to, you know, have a feeling come across or something. And it's also like when I was noticing in Baltimore, when murals were being created in this fashion, every community was pretty much saying the same thing. It was depicting a bunch of kids, kind of this overly repetitive thing. So that was like one exciting part about this project, was to cover a bunch of things throughout a series. And it felt way more complete to me than, you know, being bounced around. And one second. Where is? Now this is
it's kind of like a social
news story that came out like 2 years ago, kind of about what I do. And
my work is kind of like a social documentarian, just documenting the society and cultures around me. So it's just quite cookie cutter and simple if you put a scene like that. Here's the culture, we're putting this culture on the wall. I grew up with a fascination with the kind of like aesthetics, I guess, of graffiti. You put your art on this, have opinions about it. It makes people feel. And that in itself makes you come in around Baltimore. Maybe a house gets torn down and then there's like a lot and a wall. We'll kind of come in and with the community develop a park, a mural, going back and forth on concepts, and then that's pretty much the body of organization.
The community was very eager and receptive of us. So they'll call us and say, we have a problem area, or we have an area that we want to develop, and either help them, write grants or be the contractor to actually do the work. Really just try to fill the gaps, and we can pretty much do anything in between.
There's a lot of histories that don't get covered in Baltimore. And there's all this super rich history that wasn't recognized here. And it was really important that this history is incredibly valid, that history be recognized. And this was like the opportunity here. We just wanted to pay an homage to what this actually specifically used to be, which was a pan yard for binding, practicing, playing steel drums. And that's what our organization kind of is paid homage to the native histories of the places in which we work. So all the people in the past that weren't recognized, their histories are forgotten. Baltimore, you just have to recognize it and you have to document it.
Yeah, so just talking about like two things in there. See, and this is coming. This is who I was saying is somebody that, like whose work I saw growing up. Back to, there we go. Yeah, so I was really like awed by the work of Ernest Shaw and Pontel and Mason growing up, because the works were very photorealistic, and they were documenting the culture in the 80s in Baltimore, in the 90s in Baltimore. And that I really like the idea of getting to see that lens, when I'm driving down the street in the 2000s and in 2020 and 2021. So Ernest Shaw, the way he said it is that he sees his work as a social and cultural documentarian. And like that really changed how I was thinking about things, because it was like I came from photo. I was really into documentary and video. And it was like that. I realized kind of like there was this connection between everything that I was doing, and that a lot of how important it was, rather than kind of get caught up in all the politics, just to document what you see in front of you, the cultures you have at hand. And then the other thing is that we talked about a little bit in the video was the ecosystem, and how that the projects that we create at Art Sparks, that we want them, that we see us in connection to everything around us, whether, that be humans or whether that be plants and, you know, the whole ecosystem, and that we need to like respect that balance there. So like showing a respect of those native plants, that native history, and educating on that really started becoming like, you know, the focus of our organization. And now from here, like I'm gonna open up for like questions for a bit, but before I do that, I'm just gonna run through just some of my murals from the last few years. Here. And this is just from my website. So you can go to nether410.com and didn't talk about here. So this is a mural I did in a neighborhood called Pigtown, which is right where the original B&O Railroad is, you know, from. Now it's a museum there, but it's the neighborhood that was kind of like the workers' neighborhood of the B&O Railroad. So this was, you know, a concept showing a lot of the natural beauty of that neighborhood. There's a lot of like gardens and the Gwynns Falls Park right there. So showing that, and then kind of like the youth skater culture, saying like visually collaging these things, language to have it come across. Here's another neighborhood I worked with last year. This one's kind of cool since it like has some more 3D aspects to it. This is for this neighborhood called Butcher's Hill. And so when talking to that neighborhood, it came down to like wanting to highlight 3 things that like are visually, you know, tell the tale of the neighborhood. So that was like people hanging out in groups on stoops. That was something like we have a real big culture in general in Baltimore, but that's something they wanted to highlight. And then they have like groups of kids that will, you know, do chalk drawings on the sidewalks and stuff. And that, so we hear these lights go down like pretty much all the alleys in the neighborhood. It's really become a thing in East Baltimore, but that's something else we wanted to highlight. This one, it talks about it a little in the article. First mural that I painted in London, and I kind of really wanted to come and paint this. And this was, you know, a lot of times, it's like awesome to talk about other issues outside of the context of Baltimore. So this is about it's called The Taming of Camden. So, you know, like I come from the realm of public art, and the history is all about sculpture and all these like very machismo paintings of on horses looking fierce and like in the midst of war and just showing like what they've conquered, you know. And so it's like taking that look and putting it into a different context where it meant something else. And there's also all these pieces of art showing people taming horses and taming wild animals. Like, look at me, I tamed this ferocious beast, you know. And so there was this market called the Stables Market that burnt down in a fire. And it was like the place where the whole neighborhood would like be vending all their, you know, like everything from flowers to fruits and vegetables to, you know, anything at this market. And after it burnt down, it was a change. The developer came in, bought up the whole lot, and now like there is no market pretty much. So it was this moment that it was this move that I was trying to make this analogy to the taming really affected the culture there. It's a very cultural place in London, like Amy Winehouse is where she lived and things like that. So this is like kind of my favorite neighborhood right now to work in, this neighborhood, Mount Clair. I just have a really close relationship with that community association and a lot of people in that neighborhood. So this is like it's a really like rough neighborhood that's really beautiful, really like on a resurgence, and right next to, I mean, a lot of like just like beautiful parts of Baltimore, like forests and right by the water. So this is a story of, I don't know if anybody's heard it, but it's an African fable of like the hummingbird. And it was, it's this, I mean, in short, it's like this hummingbird, like goes and like tries to, like the forest is on fire and all the animals are fleeing, and they see this hummingbird like flying back into the fire with like just its beak full of water and just like only a drop of water. And they're all like, "What are you doing? Like you're about to die in the flames." And it's just, and the hummingbird's just pretty much like, "I'm just doing what I can, you know, like I can fly. I'm not going to get burned. I'm just dropping the water on it, doing what I can." And it was just, I really liked the message of that. And Elise did too. So this is one of our parks. And we kind of wove it in with the story with a lot of native plants that are directly replicated in the garden and labeled on the wall and in the garden. So it kind of works in this 360 fashion. This is this very large one I did in Catonsville. There's this little guy here. You can see the size of it. But this like that just shows like a bunch of different technique there. That whole background's pretty much painted with nothing but paint sprayers. It's the entry to a trail. It's a rails to trails trail. So they took a train line and they turned it into a trail once the train line was abandoned. So this is kids enjoying that. Here, let me. Having a little trouble loading here. Yep, this is one of the, I wanted to show this one since like in that video about Pimlico, which is where there was the steel drum, like pan yard there. This was the other mural. They didn't walk over to it. They were kind of in a rush, but, the mural. Also, there was this whole tradition that was going on for like, I mean, people were saying since like the 30s of people playing checkers, which is traditionally a very like popular game traditionally in Trinidad. And there was like old men playing checkers for generations and generations and at that lot. So I wanted to pay tribute to that. Okay, I'm gonna switch it back to my face, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So, and I can like flip back to things to reference things if there's something anybody saw they want to check back out again.
Hi, this is Richie Bremer, everyone. If you'd like to ask a question of Justin, just unmute yourself and ask a question. Some of you know how to use the chat function. Use that if you would prefer to do it over the chat. But I'll have a question, Justin. The spray cans you use are obviously must be specially made for what you're doing, along with various nozzle sizes.
Yeah, like for the most part, although like a lot's kind of changed in a lot for me recently, but like it's artists spray, what they call artist spray paint versus like Rust-Oleum or Krylon, the Home Depot brands. And like it's a lower pressure, so the paint comes out more slowly. It's a little bit easier to control, but there's a lot of ways you can take those Home Depot cans and put like a nozzle converter on it, and it will change the nature of the can. So yeah, you kind of have to learn about that. But, there's about 6 caps that I use regularly in my process for different types of things, different types of effects, whether that be outlining something with a thick line or just trying to create the texture of fur,
Yeah, the texture looked amazing when you consider it must take a lot of work to get those the texture to look as it does.
Yeah, thank you.
Justin, I have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
I have the sense that you must be really famous in Baltimore. You must be all over the place. When you're doing a mural, are there a lot of people that come and watch you do this in the community? Do you get a response?
Like I would say like my work's more famous than I am, since it's just kind of like people usually just see the work. But just because, like, I mean, that's the thing about public art. You put something up and potentially thousands and thousands of people might see it in a day, you know, and then, but it's the type of thing that, like, often people will like come out, like when I post like something like work in progress online or something, but generally like it's on, and it's always like it stirs a lot of interest as soon as you go out there, and there's like, what's going on with that wall, and then it turns into something. But
right.
Yeah.
Is this what we're seeing more murals in our town in Alpena? Is this considered a kind of a new art form, or has it been around for a while?
Well, okay, so painting on walls, you know, caveman, you know, but like in terms of a large volume of, you know, what we've seen in the last, like a really like graffiti, it comes from like graffiti, old school murals, the combination of all of them, the technology, kind of referring to the question about the caps. So it's gotten a lot more accessible. People are unsure of how to classify like what they refer to as street art, which is just kind of art on the street. That's all that means. And it kind of encompasses graffiti, murals, all of that, you know, like, and people say it could be the biggest art movement of all time. And then other people question whether it's a movement, you know, since it's a bunch of separate movements. There's kind of like a graffiti culture, a mural culture, you know, it's that's very philosophically debated, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Justin, did the two of you work on these projects alone? I mean, I'm trying to visualize how you do these projects. You're actually hands-on, you're actually painting, but you're also negotiating in the background with companies and communities, and it just seems like a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, but like the way we see it is that I'm trying not to complain, but like a lot of nonprofits that are involved in this work in Baltimore, they don't do enough stuff on the ground and at the desk in the same time. And we ended up doing this anyway, you know, like in the process of what we do, talking to people and painting. And it was this thing that like, when there's very little money to go around, we found like that was the model where we could be really effective, rather than have all the expenses of a project go to administrative or like paying some giant arts organization to run the project for us when we could do it ourselves. Yeah. So it's very DIY is how we think of it.
Well, thank you. This is Bob Disher speaking.
Mm-hmm.
We've been out in California and we happened to see Wyland, okay, the fellow that painted dolphins.
Yeah.
He was, that's the first time that we've ever experienced wall painting like that. But you've come a long, long way. You've spread your talent across the United States and Baltimore, which has got more history than a lot of cities have. But congratulations. The Wyland thing was something else, and how he did it. Okay, and this goes back probably 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of his work?
Yeah, if anybody doesn't know him, he's painted like these murals of whales, dolphins, like all, and there's pretty much one in just about every city in the US. It's pretty remarkable, all a very large scale, all done by brush, you know. Yeah, it's pretty epic.
And he also did the white whales too. He was big into, yeah.
On your site, this is Wanda, I'm just wondering, if we look up, I tell friends to look up that nether410.com, do you verbally talk also, explaining what you do?
A little bit. So, like I have, like, if you go to my, like, there's like a section called motion, which is like all videos. And there's some articles of me talking. I talk, and I love talking about what I do for sure. But like, I also kind of like sometimes prefer the art to speak for itself, or like, you know, I find it successful when you get the art gets the community to talk about like the wall. So like often I'll be sitting at the wall painting, and I'll meet the whole community. I'll be talking to everybody. So people, and I will many, many times explain what the meaning of the mural is. And then usually that population at that location is the one that breaks down like what I said is what I found. that's sometimes what happens. So, yeah.
Oh.
This is Bob Disher again. You absolutely, do you hide a little face or something in some of these murals that you've done, kind of just a funny type of a face? Or do you paint your face in some of these things, kind of hiding behind a leaf or behind an ear or something like that? You add a little for yourself itself. It kind of sounds like a fun thing to do.
That's an awesome question. I really like that question. So actually, like, so my answer is like, I need to find something like that to do in my artwork. I'll weave things in that I'll keep for myself and not tell anybody about, you know, sometimes, but there's a real history of that, because like, it's actually like, if anybody wants to look it up, it's called like dissident. If you look up dissident art and NPR on Google, there's like a podcast, and it's pretty much talks about the history of like protest in art. And they talk about like laying, you know, the pyramids and, you know, all these mega construction projects done by kings like throughout history. Like there was always a peasant or slave population that built these things. And like there's a real history of people, builders, writing their feelings on the side of the brick that's hidden. And as we've, like, archaeologists have dug up many of these sites, there's like a history of people voicing a complaint secretly. And like, I always like find that fascinating, or like, and it doesn't even need to be a complaint, but like, you know, I think it's fascinating, like what the artist hides, you know, for sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. That mural that was behind the Rails to Trails project with the two kids on the bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That looked huge. Maybe it was just the angle of the photograph, but I'm wondering how much paint and how much money, if a community said, okay, I want, for our Rails to Trails, I want that sort of introduction to our resource here. How much would something like that cost in terms of just supplies?
Like, in terms of just like supplies, like, yeah, I'm just trying to go back to the mural just so I can reference it if you guys can see it. But like this is like the biggest mural I've ever painted. It's like 100 and I think like 60 feet long by like about 50 feet tall or something. I don't know. But it's like fabulous. It's
great.
Yeah. So So this one, it's like all I can do is like describe like the process of like how it came together. So, because I'm sure you guys have something very similar in Michigan. Like we have like a public art prize award for like some project, and it was like a $10,000 award, and so I was interested in applying to it. I was approached by Catonsville. They showed me some buildings. They showed me some things. So we were like, okay, that actually is not enough to cover something like this. So often, when you win something like that, there will be a large interest in match funding. So this was something that like a few grant resources and some money from the property owner, since they wanted it on their wall, is how it came together. But for doing a larger scale project, that's usually what it needs. But with paint and something like that, paint's not always the most expensive. But I know my paint budget, if I remember correctly, was I don't know, around $7,000 for this, and that's and that's for me. I don't know if that low lift was in there too, or but it's high quality paint. I'm doing multiple layers, trying to get really good coverage. It took, at least 100 gallons of paint probably. I'm not sure if I used everything, but yeah, it takes a lot of paint.
Well, it's just wonderful. As I look at it, I did not notice the windows in the building at first. I mean, they're just sort of folded in there and you don't even see them. I mean, the pavement, the hill, it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Amazing.
We had a chat question come in, Justin. Do people ever add to your art? And if so, how do you feel about that?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever had people add to my, or really add to my art, but I've definitely had graffiti tags on my murals before, but not really in Baltimore. And that's because Baltimore's a small town. I kind of grew up here, painting here. There's a mutual respect between myself and graffiti to me, about, just the talent of spray paint. And often there needs to be that holistic connection in a city between street artists and graffiti artists to create that situation. When that gets abused in ways then you find tags on murals, but it takes some groundwork, being nice to people to avoid it.
When you were in elementary school, how close to this kind of thing were you at all interested in art at that point, or were you planning on engineering cars? Or you mentioned photography was in your lifestyle, but
that was even later. I mean, I guess I was into drawing, but not seriously. When I first started to do stuff like that seriously, it was, I kind of feel in some ways it was started from creating stickers for the bottom of my skateboard. that's
good.
That kind of put things together for me in my head.
Just, I noticed the texture of the brick in these buildings varies. It would appear to vary considerably. Do you use that texture of the different styles of bricks in your pieces?
Yeah, I definitely use the texture a lot, and I think about texture a lot in terms of how I'm painting. And that's once again, there's been what has made it such a popular art form is there's been a lot of innovations in different types of like, different ways to paint. So with spray paint, you can like use that a lot of that texture to your advantage. And the way I always like, I would prefer not to have to project an outline of a mural. There's something more artistic and like beautiful to me about like rendering it more freely, but like often when in that texture will create a bunch of reference points where I can more realistically shape the mural. So I can like see that window and see that like, I don't know, fire alarm on the side of the wall and like see like, okay, that's where the eye lines up with the lit, So that's how I like to think of it. So I a lot of people would prefer a blank square, and I'm not like that. I like walls and however they look and that challenge of like working with it, Yeah.
Justin, a question. Have you considered or have you been using any three-dimensional projections in any of your artwork?
Three-dimensional projections. I'm not sure what they mean since I have two ideas of what they could mean. Was that a question from the messages?
Yeah. What would be, example would be if you had a mural that had like a basketball player in it, and the basketball itself would actually be a projection out from the wall in the shape of a basketball, and that would be a projection to enhance that mural.
Yeah, no, I haven't done anything like that. I've seen things like that, and I think it's really cool. Like, and I think it's like really cool in an educational sense too. Like, I saw this mural where it was a scene of the sea with all these sea creatures, and then you could like zoom in on the turtle with your phone, and then like it goes into like the turtle starts moving, and it goes into describing like the fact that like it's choking on litter that gets into the bay, and it like helps educate the people more. I really like that. I'd like to do stuff like that, but I haven't.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Justin? I guess we got a quiet group today.
I have one question. I am stunned by the detail and the beauty of what is in your murals on such a huge scale. And I'm wondering, if you talked a little bit earlier about the debate about what kind of art this is or where it fits into art. Have you had a chance to interact with any art museums? Is there any way to capture some of that and display it in a traditional art setting?
Into a traditional art setting, that's a good question. I guess I'm a little bit like puzzled on it since I guess like I haven't found out the way that I would want to do that right now. But I would have an interest in that. Like, I think that like, as I was saying, like you often are like contained by like being brought into a situation, painting a one-off mural, having to cover a lot of things in your one mural. I was saying I liked my series, like being able to do series of murals in a neighborhood. But like some thoughts that I have that I want to explore artistically, it would make sense to do it in a fine art form. But in general, and it's partially for financial reasons, like there's not really and it's really sad, there's not really an art market. I mean, there's not much art market right now in general, like, but there's really none in Baltimore. And like, we have like one major art institution, the Baltimore Museum of Art, but they have like a small capacity to work with Baltimore artists. And like, so a lot of the reasons I chose to put my art on the streets is because there was so many, it's one of the most segregated cities in America. And there's just like most Baltimore won't go into an art gallery. Like, that's the reality I'm dealing with. So it was like kind of trying to make it for everybody. And like, where some grantor or some funding would pay for it, but then like nobody had to pay admissions or like to even question whether they're allowed to be there. Since I feel like a lot of people in Baltimore just don't feel like they're literally allowed to be anywhere at any moment. So it's, I don't know, there's a lot of, in Baltimore, there's a lot of divides that make it so my art was going to be unable to reach the population I wanted it to, you know?
Right. There's Milwaukee's another one of those most segregated cities. And their UW Milwaukee has started what they're calling a community art curriculum, which I think is aimed exactly at the kind of thing that you're doing at promoting that. And we have a kid there. We have another kid in Seattle. That museum has done a lot of outreach to different communities, put things in different places.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome, since it's like art's like one of the best ways to bring people together and like, yeah. And, you know, have people meet each other, talk things out. And, you know, it's a way to, it's a way to break down those barriers in a very easygoing way.
And I think that you and your cohorts are putting art where it needs to be and where it belongs, which is out where everybody can see it.
Well, this is Bob Disher. One other question I have just popped into my noodle. You know, art and music seem to go together, I think. Is there any way that some of your murals can be animated with music of the item or of the scene? If it's you know, if it's a party type of a thing, or whatever the mantra is there any thought about maybe putting music along with it? Because you know, music is universal.
Yeah, no, that's something that I'm actually trying to figure out how to do right now in a way that not my own music. I don't really make music of my own but anymore, but I used to. But I have a friend, one of my best friends is a musician, and like we've been kind of more seriously thinking about how to directly collaborate for like a video where I would like, I could potentially make a mural about the subject matter of this song and kind of work in that fashion. And I think of art or collages and poems and a lot of these things as kind of like the same thing. They're just different ways of approaching a subject matter. So I would like to do it with music in tandem for sure.
Nether, I'm wondering about how long a mural like the ones you are painting last, and what kind of reconditioning you need to do, and how do you do that? I mean, the real answer, like I'll tell you what I tell people, and what I mean, not the truth and what I tell people. That there's not. I mean, that we don't know. Like we have no. If you get a painter that tries to tell you that this will last 20 years but this one will last 40 years, or a paint brand, like nobody knows. So, but what we do know is that in the last couple years, paint's gotten a lot better, and it pretty much dries in a harder way, where it becomes more of a shell, more of its own thing. And like, I would say that
hopefully like 50 years, definitely 20 years, you know, it really depends. This construction issue of the house. Like, so if you have water damage on the wall or you didn't use a good primer, like, you know, it might not last as long, but then it's just like, I have things I've painted 10 years ago on vacants that are still there that are in like the bright colors and great conditions. So you really never know.
This is Avery Ayton talking, and I thought I'd put in my 2 cents on the issue of music with the art. And, music is transient, and music is street music, and the music will come to the art from the community. And people will come in, like we do here in Alpena, actually. Different music groups will come and play in front of the art and give it some life, and then they'll come back again at some other time. It'll be different each time. So music can be part of what the community contributes to keep the art ongoing.
Yeah, awesome. And when I make parks, I'm thinking in the way of parks, like you know, you're kind of creating a space which gets activated by community often using the arts, you know, and music. So.
Anyone else?
Well, I'd suggest that you paint a stage on some building and then use that as a reason to invite different music groups within the city or surrounding area to perform there. You can do that. You know, I think on a heartbeat. There's probably some spots within the city or within spots within the city you can do this. Northeast, southwest, or whatever. Paint a stage, a music stage. But you're going to have symphony people come in and play their famous music, or the rock and roll, or you pick it, you name it. And, you know, music is the international language, no matter where you go. So the best to you has been just amazing. Your intuitive view of a butterfly that's 10 feet tall, that just blows me away. Or an eyeball, a 2 pair of eyes and a nose and a mustache, or a curly-headed little girl. You know, how you do all that is just, it's an amazing talent. And thank you again for sharing this. This is Bob Disher.
Justin, we had a question about on chat. Does sun exposure affect your art performance? Is that a factor?
Yeah, so sometimes, I was about to say, sometimes on walls that have a lot of sun exposure, I'll put a UV protection, like a concrete sealer, like they call them UV concrete sealers, on top of it. But yeah, sun will affect it. Sun will make it fade, water will destroy it, you know, or just make it fall off, you know. But yeah, so I'm more concerned about water than sun generally, but yeah, sun is not great for it.
Do you design your artwork to fit, let's say, if you have a sunny wall versus a wall that's dark often?
Yep. So if I put a, you know, really dark color on a bright wall, it's going to fade. And some in really rich colors, like in some colors like greens and yellows don't perform as well either. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else for Justin? Well, if Justin, you want to wrap up or?
No, yeah, I'll just thank you guys for inviting me to this, and my grandparents and Jodine and everybody for making it happen. It's cool to present especially in quarantine, you don't get to travel much, and it's cool to present my artwork to like a broader population that is less familiar with Baltimore. I'm often very only presenting within my bubble or context. So yeah, thanks for that, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Very much. Thank you very much. Well, I would, there's a lot of the Nether family on the call here. I can leave the room open, and if some would like to just chat together as family members or acquaintances, feel free to do that. We'll just stop recording. I guess we got one more chat question here. I got a well done on the chat.